400 people made jeans in Cardigan, Wales. Then 0 people did. For 10 years, nothing. Then 15 people started again, making not 35,000 pairs a week, but 120, a 99.7% reduction in volume. And somehow, that was enough. Not enough to rebuild an economy, enough to rebuild a story. Because when a town loses its only factory, it doesn't just lose wages. It loses the sentence it uses to describe itself. And Hiut Denim didn't give Cardigan new jobs. Not really. It gave Cardigan back its verb. The question this raises is one nobody in branding wants to sit with for very long. Can a company with 15 employees function as civic infrastructure? Can a brand do what a government didn't? Welcome to the Threads of Culture, a show that unpacks design, branding, and the cultural forces shaping the global stage. This episode argues that the most important thing a brand can manufacture isn't a product, it's a reason for a place to exist. Here's the shape of this one. We start with a factory town that forgot its own name. Then we look at the brand that wrote it back in. And we end with a question that's harder than it looks, about what it means when a brand becomes the last institution standing. For roughly 40 years, starting in the 1960s, the town of Cardigan housed the largest jeans factory in the United Kingdom. Population 4,000. Factory workforce 400. 1 in 10 residents cut, stitched, or finished denim for a living. The factory wasn't just an employer, it was the town's circulatory system. Wages moved through pubs, schools, grocers. The skill moved through families. Mothers taught daughters the particular tension a flat fell seam requires. The knowledge lived in hands, yes, but also in geography, in the specific air of a specific place. Then in 2002, production moved to Morocco, and the factory closed. 400 jobs vanished from a town with no backup plan. What followed was a decade of silence. Not metaphorical silence, actual silence. The machines stopped. The people who had operated them scattered into whatever work a rural Welsh coastal town could offer, which was not much. And the skill those people carried sat dormant in their hands, muscle memory with no factory left to use it in, like a language no one was asking them to speak. Hiut and his wife Claire arrived at the idea of Hiut Denim in 2012, a full decade after the closure. They weren't outsiders exactly. They had built Howie's, a Welsh outdoor clothing brand they later sold to Timberland. They knew how to construct narrative around product, but what they did with Hiut was structurally different from building a clothing company. They built a brand whose entire value proposition was inseparable from a single place. We make jeans, that's it. 5 words that sound like minimalist copywriting but function as economic philosophy. The constraint isn't aesthetic, it is the business model. Hiut makes jeans to order, not to season. It sources selvage denim from Turkey and Japan. Each pair is hand-cut and sewn by workers, some of whom spent decades on the old factory floor. The jeans retail above 200 pounds. The customers are not the people of Cardigan. They are design-literate consumers in London, Tokyo, Brooklyn. People who will pay a premium for provenance, for the story stitched into the inseam. And this is where the system becomes visible. Hiut doesn't sell denim, it sells the conversion of local loss into luxury signifier. A working-class skill set, refined over 40 years in an industrial factory, repackaged as artisanal craft for an audience that would never set foot in Cardigan. The value flows outward and upward. The workers benefit through employment, but the cultural capital compounds elsewhere. Now let's look at how the visual identity locks this into place. When Pentagram partner Hugh Miller redesigned Hiut's identity, the most significant move was embedding Aberteifi, the Welsh name for Cardigan, directly into the brand mark. The town's name became the brand's signature. This is not decoration, this is encoding, a graphic system that makes place and product grammatically inseparable. You cannot read the label without reading the town. And this is the mechanism that separates Hiut from its most instructive comparison. Shinola, the watch and leather goods company, positioned itself as made in Detroit and leaned hard on that city's narrative of decline and grit. But Shinola was founded by a Dallas-based investor. Its watches were assembled from Swiss components. The story was borrowed, not lived. When critics pointed this out, the brand's credibility cracked. Hiut avoids this because David and Clare Hieatt actually live in Cardigan. They run the Do Lectures, an ideas festival from a field nearby. David wrote a book about building community through email newsletters. The brand, the founders, the conference, the content, the town. They form a single ecosystem where each element legitimizes the others. This is what brand as infrastructure actually looks like. Not a company that donates to a community, a company that is the community's operating system. Brunello Cucinelli does something similar in Solomeo, Italy, restoring the medieval village, rebuilding its theater and library, employing local artisans. But Cucinelli is a billionaire. His brand subsidizes the town from above. Hieatt operates at a scale where the distinction between patron and participant dissolves. The brand doesn't fund Cardigan's revival. The brand is the revival. And the revival is the brand. And neither can survive without the other. This is where the contradiction sharpens instead of resolving. 15 is not 400. A cult brand beloved by designers is not an industrial employer that sustains a working-class economy. The decade between 2002 and 2012, the years when those 400 workers had no factory, is mostly absent from the Hieatt narrative. What happened to them? Who left town? Who retrained? Who didn't? The brand story begins at redemption, which means it requires the suffering but doesn't dwell in it. There is a version of this that looks like what critics call ruin porn, the aestheticization of decline as a prelude to a beautiful comeback. And there is a structural fragility that no amount of storytelling resolves. Hieatt is inseparable from David Hieatt's personal brand. His writing, his lectures, his social media fluency. If brand can be infrastructure, we have to ask whether infrastructure can depend on a single, charismatic founder. Cardigan already learned what happens when one employer disappears. The question of whether Hieatt is revival or elegy is not rhetorical. It is genuinely unresolved. And the honesty of the project may depend on refusing to answer it. So here is what Hiut Denim actually proves. Not that a brand can save a town. It cannot. Not at this scale, not with these numbers. What it proves is that in the absence of functioning institutions, in the hollow left when governments and unions and industrial employers withdraw from places they once animated, a brand can become the last structure standing. Not because it should be, because nothing else showed up. We are living through a period when the institutions that once gave towns their stories, factories, churches, civic organizations, have retreated from the places that needed them most. And into that silence step companies with good taglines and beautiful typography and a genuine, if insufficient, commitment to place. Hieatt makes 120 pairs of jeans a week in a town that once made 35,000. The math doesn't work as economics. It works as identity. And the fact that we find that moving, the fact that a brand filling an institutional vacuum strikes us as beautiful rather than alarming, says less about Hieatt than it does about what we've accepted as normal. Here is what I want to know. You own something made by a small company that tells a beautiful story about where it comes from. Have you ever checked whether that story is the town's version or just the brand's? I suspect you already know which one you'd rather believe. The next time a brand tells you a beautiful story about where it comes from, you'll know exactly which parts you never bothered to check. Until next time, this has been the Threads of Culture.